What if a nation's quest for empire left a scar so deep it still shapes the identity of a people today? Welcome to the sands of history, where we unearth the untold stories of triumph, tragedy, and resilience. In this exploration, we dive into the Italian colonization of Libya, 1911 to 1943, a period marked by fierce resistance from Libyan tribes and brutal repression by Italian forces. From the heroic stand of Omar Mukhtar to the horrors of concentration camps, this chapter reveals a complex tale of conquest and defiance. Like, share, and subscribe to join us on this journey through time, and check the description for links to help us financially support more historical deep dives. The genesis of Italian ambition in Libya. In the late 19th century, Italy, a newly unified nation, sought to assert itself as a colonial power, eyeing North Africa to bolster its prestige and secure Mediterranean influence. Libya, then under Ottoman control, became a prime target after France claimed Tunisia in 1881, thwarting Italian ambitions there. The Italo-Turkish War, 1911 to 1912, marked the beginning of Italy's colonial venture as it invaded the Ottoman provinces of Tripolitania and Cyrenaica. The 1912 Treaty of Lausanne forced the Ottomans to cede control, but the local Libyan population was far from subdued. The Italians envisioned Libya as their fourth shore, a fertile land for settlers and a gateway to African trade. However, this vision ignored Libya's arid terrain and the fierce independence of its people, particularly the nomadic Senussi Order in Cyrenaica. The miscalculation sparked one of the longest anti-colonial resistances in North African history, lasting over 2 decades. Early resistance, the Senussi and the Libyan spirit. Libyan resistance began almost immediately after the Italian invasion. The Senussi Order, a politico-religious brotherhood founded by Muhammad ibn Ali al-Senussi in 1837, became the backbone of opposition, especially in Cyrenaica. Led initially by Ahmed Sharif as-Senussi, the Senussi leveraged their integration with local tribes to mount guerrilla warfare against Italian forces. By 1914, Tripoli was under Italian control, but Cyrenaica and Fezzan remained hotbeds of rebellion. In 1918, the short-lived Tripolitanian Republic emerged as an attempt to establish local governance, but internal divisions and Italian military pressure crushed it by 1922. The Senussi, under Sheikh Idris al-Mahdi as Senussi, later King Idris III, continued to resist, rejecting Ottoman pressures to attack British Egypt and focusing on Italian forces. The resistance was not just military but cultural, aiming to preserve Libyan identity against foreign imposition. The Italians relied on local recruits, such as the Savari cavalry and Spahai police, drawn from Arab Berber populations to bolster their colonial troops. However, these units often faced divided loyalties, as many Libyans remained committed to the resistance. By 1915, Italian control was limited to coastal areas, with the interior dominated by Senussi and tribal forces. The Fascist era and escalating repression. The rise of Benito Mussolini's fascist regime in 1922 marked a turning point. Mussolini prioritized Libya's colonization, viewing it as a cornerstone of his vision to revive the Roman Empire. The Second Italo-Senussi War, 1923–1932, intensified under generals Pietro Badoglio and Rodolfo Graziani, the latter infamously known as the Butcher of Fezzan. Mussolini's orders to crush resistance at whatever cost unleashed a campaign of unprecedented brutality. Italian forces employed modern warfare tactics, including aerial bombardments and chemical weapons, marking some of the earliest uses of these against civilian populations in North Africa. Graziani's strategy focused on severing the resistance's lifelines. In 1930, a 170-mile barbed wire fence, the Frontier Wire, was erected from the Mediterranean to the Jagbub Oasis to block Senussi supply routes from Egypt. This was followed by the forced deportation of over 100,000 Cyrenaicans from the fertile Jebel Akhdar region to concentration camps in Suluk and El Agheila. The camps, operational between 1930 and 1933, were a grim hallmark of Italian repression. Approximately 4/5 of Cyrenaica's nomadic and semi-nomadic population, nearly half of eastern Libya's people, were interned. Conditions were squalid, with minimal food, poor sanitation, and rampant disease. Typhus and starvation claimed thousands, with estimates suggesting 60,000 to 70,000 deaths from combat, starvation, or disease. Historian Ilan Pappé estimates that between 1928 and 1932, the Italian military killed half the Bedouin population through these means. Omar Mukhtar, the Lion of the Desert. At the heart of the resistance stood Omar Mukhtar, a Senussi sheikh known as the Lion of the Desert. For nearly 20 years, Mukhtar led a guerrilla campaign, orchestrating ambushes and rallying tribes against Italian forces. His leadership was not only tactical, but moral. He reportedly refused to torture Italian captives, stating, "They are not our teachers," despite complaints from his fighters. Mukhtar's resistance frustrated Italian efforts, with General Graziani confronting him 160 times in 18 months. In September 1931, Mukhtar was captured, tried, and publicly hanged in Suluk concentration camp before hundreds, intended as a warning to rebels. Yet, his execution galvanized resistance, and his legacy endures on Libya's 10-dinar note. Before his death, Mukhtar declared, "We do not surrender. We win or die. And this is not the end, but you will have to fight the next generation and the generations after that." His words proved prophetic, inspiring continued defiance. The pacification campaign and its costs. The Italian pacification campaign, culminating in 1932, was one of the most ruthless counterinsurgencies in Western history. Beyond the frontier wire and concentration camps, the Italians executed rebel leaders systematically to decapitate the resistance. The campaign succeeded militarily, but at a devastating human cost. Estimates of Libyan deaths range from 40,000 to 80,000, with some sources claiming up to 1/3 of Cyrenaica's population perished. The total Libyan population dropped from 1.5 million in 1910 to 800,000 by 1943, reflecting the toll of war, displacement, and deprivation. Both sides committed atrocities. Senussi forces, particularly early in the conflict, did not take prisoners and mutilated captured Italian troops, especially Christian Eritreans, as seen in the 1911 Shar massacre. However, the scale of Italian repression, including the use of mustard gas and collective punishment, far outweighed these acts, earning condemnation as genocidal by historians like Ali Abdullatif Ahmida. Demographic colonization and cultural erasure. By 1934, with resistance largely crushed, Italy unified Tripolitania and Cyrenaica into Italian Libya under Governor Italo Balbo. The colony was divided into 4 provinces, and Mussolini launched a demographic colonization program, relocating over 100,000 Italian settlers to Libya by 1939, particularly to Cyrenaica's Green Mountain. Libyan lands were confiscated and displaced locals were barred from returning. Mussolini's propaganda portrayed Libya as a revived Roman province, with settlers as rightful heirs. The 1937 opening of the Via Balbia, a military highway, and Mussolini's self-proclamation as protector of Islam were symbolic gestures to legitimize Italian rule. However, these efforts alienated Libyans further, as cultural and economic structures were dismantled. The fascist regime also regulated social interactions, banning colonial concubinage by the 1930s to enforce racial segregation as Italian women arrived. This shift reflected a broader policy of cultural erasure, aiming to replace Libyan identity with an Italianized fourth shore. The end of Italian rule and its legacy, Italian control weakened during World War II, with Libya becoming a battleground in the North African campaign. By 1943, Allied forces defeated the Italians, and Libya fell under British and French administration. The 1947 peace treaty forced Italy to relinquish claims, and Libya gained independence in 1951 under King Idris. The colonial period left deep scars. An estimated 500,000 to 600,000 Libyans died, and the social, economic and cultural fabric was disrupted. The trauma persisted, fueling resentment evident in reactions to Italy's 2017 embassy reopening, seen by some as neo-colonialism. In 2008, Italy and Libya signed a treaty of friendship, with Italy agreeing to pay $5 billion in reparations, acknowledging killing, destruction and repression during colonial rule. Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi returned stolen artifacts like the Venus of Cyrene and apologized publicly. However, the treaty's collapse during the 2011 Libyan civil war underscored ongoing tensions. Conclusion. Echoes in the sands. The Italian colonization of Libya was a saga of ambition, brutality, and unyielding resistance. From Omar Mukhtar's defiance to the horrors of concentration camps, it reveals the human cost of empire and the resilience of a people fighting for their identity. Welcome to the sands of history, where these stories live on, urging us to learn from the past. Like, share, and subscribe to keep exploring with us, and visit the links in the description to help us financially continue this journey.